and then there was a more episodes a few years later when I was like 6 or 7 years old, where my brother kept having a nightmare that a giant praying mantis was looking in the window. And he had this repeated nightmare over and over again. Never really thought anything about it. At the same time, he kept having another nightmare where he would float down the stairs, he would come around the corner, and he would see me in a chair hooked up to machines with men around me with big heads.
Well, Scott, welcome to the channel and welcome to this show.
Thank you for having me.
You and I have talked for a long time back and forth, and Mark has as well, and it's fabulous to finally get you on the show here. This is great.
It is. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you have a Facebook page in the field, and I've seen some of your videos as well. And now, is the name of your channel In the Field also for YouTube?
It's Scott Browne, but ITF in parentheses.
Ah, In the Field. And, you know, when I think about you, I think about a guy who, you know, you want to believe and want to see stuff just like the rest of us, but you don't want to be hoodwinked. And you've meticulously gone through and made comparisons of, you know, things in the sky that people see versus mundane objects, which they could likely be, you know, whether it be birds, insects, lens flares, certain effects of the camera, certain effects of the environment you're shooting in. And, you know, I'm impressed. You know, when a person first gets into this, they do fall victim to all of these things. Like, you know, everything in the sky is a UFO. And maybe you did too at the beginning. I know we sure did. And over time, we've learned. And, you know, we listened to a lot of the things you said because you came in and you made comments and, you know, it was a little difficult for us because you really believe you're seeing things, but you have to apply reason to it. So could you tell the viewers, give a little bit of background of how you got started into this, you know, your path into this, and talk about your YouTube channel and your Facebook page a little bit after that.
I had 2 episodes of sleep paralysis. And during that time, I think it kind of, you know, looking back on it, it kind of traumatized me a little bit. It was this weird feeling of kind of fear and dread when this happened. And it stayed with me for a while. I, you know, let it go. I forgot all about it. Sometime down the road, I had been reading a lot of biographies. And I went to the biography section, and there was a book by Howard Blum called Out There. And so I picked it up and I read the back and I said, oh, sounds kind of interesting. I never really put any validity into the UFO field. I always thought it was a bunch of bunk and, you know, so I picked up this book, I brought it home. And from that point on, it was nonstop. So as this went on, I began to see parallels in the literature to things that happened to me when I was younger. And one that stood out dramatically was I was 3 or 4 years old. I disappeared from our family home. My father was a police officer, and they put out an APB for me. All the neighbors were looking for me. A couple hours later, I come wandering up out of this field saying that I was talking to horses, but they were cows. So the shocking part for my parents was, especially for my mom, who wrote about it in the little diary baby book that she had, um, that when they got up, the door was still deadbolted from the inside. And so there was no way that I could have reached it because it was too high for me to unbolt it and everything, you know. So that became kind of a running joke between me and my mother for years afterwards, where, you know, she'd say something and I'd say something and she'd say, "Oh, you know, what, are you going to disappear?" You know, and just little jokes like that. So those things stood out. And then there was a more episodes a few years later, when I was like 6 or 7 years old, where my brother kept having a nightmare that a giant praying mantis was looking in the window. Um, and he had this repeated nightmare over and over again. Never really thought anything about it. At the same time, he kept having another nightmare where he would float down the stairs, he would come around the corner, and he would see me in a chair hooked up to machines with men around me with big heads. Those are his words. So this was, you know, these things started to like, I started to kind of think, you know, maybe this sleep paralysis kind of opened the door on some kind of trauma that I had when I was younger from something that I couldn't explain. But I found that in the literature too, that, you know, people who've had contact have had some kind of paralysis. There's cases of it here and there. Um, and so as time went on, you know, I began to research, and then I found the internet, and that opened up all kinds of new doors. And like you said, um, I was fooled by many of the people who were putting things out. You know, the Billy Myers of the world, and you know, just a lot of the people that were throwing this stuff out there. And I was like, oh my God, this is incredible, you know. And then once I progressed in my um, studies of, my high school was a unique school where we had uh, the entire basement floor was dedicated to the arts. So one room was photography with the dark room, the chemicals. One room was printing with a printing press, pottery, painting. And so I flourished because I was an artist from a young age. Um, and so photography, I really got into studying how they superimpose the photos. And in the old days, it was super meticulous, cutting things out, pasting them in, rephotographing, painting out the details, you know, things like that. And then as I progressed into the world of digital and Photoshop, I taught myself Photoshop, and then I ended up going to college for digital imaging and photography, and began to see how simple that had become. That whole process of the darkroom, the chemicals, you know, that was just completely, it just wiped all that out. And what would have taken hours before would take a few minutes. And it was just so fast. And then of course CGI came along, and you know, they were starting to do the animation, and you know, so I start in the field. I started to bring people together, which were filming different places around the world. And from then on, it's just been a nonstop kind of learning thing, you know, with, I always tell people, once you build a library of the things that are known, and you can refer to that library, and it doesn't match any of those library books, then it's an unknown, you know. And so, you know, I guess I think being fooled by some people when I first got into it kind of made me a little aggressive towards people, and kind of gave me an attitude. And as the years have gone on, I've seen that in myself and I've tampered it down. And so I have people come to me now nonstop with a lens flare and, just like crazy stuff. And I'm very, kind of, I try to be as gentle as I can with them and explain, here's what I think it is. Here's why I think that. And, most of the time it goes good, sometimes not so good. So,
Yeah, yeah, I know. And the thing is, most of the people start into that way, and you do have to be patient with them because it's a learning curve.
so I've had some what people call the high strangeness around me a lot.
We love
Um,
we love that, Scott.
yeah, and I guess for a long time it was kind of frightening, shocking. Now it's kind of like, oh, hey, there you are, and it's like it just happens. Um, this one incident I have, and I actually uploaded the clip, but it was shot with the Recon. I think it's 750 or 550. It's not so good resolution wise. It's black and white. It's got a fixed focus. Um, and so as I'm panning, I'm out about 3 o'clock in the morning. Um, and I'm panning across some of the rooftops on the other side of the road. And I'm keeping I have it's monocular, so I'm looking through with one eye, but I got the other eye open. And through the monocular, it looked as if a leaf came down, but it came in a perfect straight vertical line and stopped right on the roof of the house across the street. So as I passed, I thought in my head, oh, it's just a leaf. But then I thought, I'm shooting into pitch black darkness. So, and there weren't really any leaves out at that time for that to even happen. So as I bring the camera back, it was a an orb, for a better lack of a better term, um, sitting right on the roof. And so I trained the camera in on it. And once I do, that's the clip you see. I start filming it. It moves towards me to the edge of the roof. And then as it comes to the edge of the roof, it kind of disperses in like a slow starburst. And I was like, "What the hell was that?" And it was like it kind of made the hair stand up on my neck. So, anyways, that's one aspect of it. Um,
Hey, Scott, where could a viewer find that video? Now that you've talked about it, people are going to want to actually view it. Tell us how we can find that video.
it's on my YouTube channel, and I think it's called "Orb Landed on a Roof." I think something to that effect.
Okay.
Um, and so the high strangeness stuff has been going on for a long time. I was in bed and um, something startled me awake. So it's about 3 o'clock in the morning. Um, and as I woke up, I sat straight up in the bed and I swung my legs over the side of the bed, stood right up, and started walking towards the door, like almost an instantaneous one fluid motion, stand up, start walking. And as I did, there was this just all I can describe it as a large dark shadow moving in front of me, but moving towards the door like it was trying to get out of the room before me. And so all the hair stood up on my neck, and I was like, oh my God. So I'm thinking somebody's in our house. So I start pursuing this lumpy shadow thing. And as I get out into the hallway, the moon was coming through the window and creating the shape of the window on the wall. And this shape passed in front of that and blocked it out just for a second as it passed. So I thought, my rational mind was saying there's branches out there, they're moving in front of the moon to cause this to happen. And I instantly looked out the window and there was no branches in front of a full moon. So I thought, okay, one of the kids is out of bed, they're going to the bathroom. So I stepped into my daughter's room, sound asleep. I stepped into my stepson's room, sound asleep. So I feel like that whatever this was very near me. And for some reason, it startled me awake. And so that's
Scott,
really,
yeah, this is interesting. You know, we've had a lot of, we call it cool high strangeness. And we're at the point, if we go on an expedition and things are not happening in that regard, we're a little bit disappointed. But we've never been disappointed for the expedition, because every single one, there's something that happens in this category of cool high strangeness.